What's up guys, Lou here for Golf Avenue, and we're back with another video. This time we're taking a look at one of the biggest trends in golf, the mini driver. That's right, we're going to take a look at 5 of the latest mini drivers to be out in the market, compare their performance, and see which one ends up on top. So let's not waste any more time and let's go start testing our clubs. So first up in our test, we had the TaylorMade 300 Series Mini Driver, which was released in 2021. It was TaylorMade's second foray into remaking their old models as refurbished mini drivers. The first one was actually the original one, which was released in 2019. Unfortunately, we didn't have it on hand for this test, so we're going to 2021 with the 300 series. But back to the 300, it was a great starting point for our experiment. Off-center strikes were indeed a bit costly, but the other thing was that anything closer to the heel or closer to the hosel would end up in pulls to the inside, which is typical from smaller club heads like these ones. I will say I was able to work my fade, which I really appreciated, but do keep in mind that if you open the face slightly too much, it can end up in a slice. In terms of impact, I felt like I was able to push the ball down the range whenever I really wanted to. The only downside is that, especially off the deck, the control was a bit lacking in my opinion off the club face. And of course, when you're talking about mini driver, control and feel for the ball are often the top of mind. So in this case, I feel like this one came out a bit short in this department. But again, that's just my feeling. I'm really looking forward to looking at the data and seeing how this one fared. Next, we're looking at Titleist's latest offering in the mini driver market, the GT280. It's the thing of beauty. And one of the things I really like about this club is how deep the club face is. It really goes low, 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 which I really appreciated, especially when it came to hitting this club off the deck. I felt like I was just able to swoop the ball off the ground without too much trouble with turf interactions, which I really, really appreciated. Those same turf interactions made me feel like I was able to push the ball with a lot of ease every time I was making contact. I felt like the ball was exploding off the club face. It really felt nice at impact, so really props to Titleist for that one. In terms of accuracy and feel for that one, I feel like it was very good. I didn't feel any discomfort with it. I will say that off-center strikes will end up being costly. It's typical for mini drivers, but overall, I was very impressed with this club, especially its versatility compared to hitting off the ground versus hitting off the tee. In both departments, it was very, very good in my opinion, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the data and actually seeing how this one fared too. Next up, we're looking at the third driver in our test and the second TaylorMade model in our list. It's the BRNR Mini Copper. It was the successor to the 300 series and came out in 2023. It's really one of the better looking drivers from our test today, but the question is, will its performance match its looks? And to answer that question, I personally think that it was. I have a lot of praise to give to this club. I felt like I was really able to control the golf ball off the tee and that it really flew off the club face without trying to swing out of my shoes or anything like that. But I will mention that it's definitely not the longest club in our test. I can tell you that without even looking at the numbers. Despite the shorter distances, it was the consistency from this club that really impressed me. It's a proper upgrade over the 300 in my opinion, but do keep in mind that off-center strikes will be costly. In my opinion, low or mid-handicap golfers will probably benefit more from the usage of this club. The fourth club in our test today is the Callaway Elyte Mini, and I have to say that to me, this club is a holy grail club. It was very decent off the ground, a very respectable performance, pretty accurate honestly, but the main thing is when you put this one up on a tee, it turns into an absolute bomber. I felt like I was able to launch the ball for miles. It cracked off the club face. It was amazing, honestly. You can tell that Callaway really leaned into the jailbreak tech with this one, as center strikes felt like they were exploding off the club face, and off-center strikes were a bit more costly, but really not that bad. And on top of that, the titanium club face made it so that I could really feel the ball at impact, so I could easily tell good strikes from the bad ones. On top of that, you can adjust the hosel and the weights at the back of the club head to perfectly customize the club to your swing. I'm really looking forward to seeing the data on this one, but I can easily imagine a bunch of players swapping out their 3 woods or even their driver for this beauty right here. Last but not least, we have TaylorMade's latest release to the mini driver market, the R7 Quad. It's of course a modern take on their 2007 original release, the R7 Quad, but this time in the form of a mini driver. Truth be told, I do have mixed feelings when it comes to this club. Off the tee, it was really complicated to find a good feel for the ball, which really led to inconsistencies both in terms of dispersion, but also in terms of distance. Really hard to find my comfort with that one off the tee. But off the deck, it was quite pleasant, honestly. I have to say it was one of the straighter ones when it came to performance off the deck, but the same issue arose when it came to off-center strikes. Distance would be lacking. which led to really a bunch of issues. So I do have a lot of mixed feelings when it comes to this one. The one thing I'll say though is that the weights at the back of the club head will most likely become a staple for TaylorMade. We've seen some sneak peeks of their next releases when it comes to driver. Looks like those will be part of the design, so just keep in mind that this sort of technology from TaylorMade is here to stay for the time being. That being said, I really hope the data proves me wrong, but overall, I couldn't quite find the comfort of the tee, which made it really hard to like this club more than I did. Alrighty, now that we've wrapped up with my first impressions, it's time for you guys' favorite segment. It's time to take a look at the data. So right off the bat, I think we have a few obvious surprises when it comes to performance off the tee specifically. Let's look at the 300. It was the first driver we tested, but it also ended up being the longest in terms of total distance. There's no doubt that it benefited from the highest swing speed and ball speed, which it turned into the longest overall distance. Really much more of a bomber than I expected from the 300, so I'm really looking forward to having a look at its dispersion zone. The Elyte ranks right in the middle of the pack, which is surprising to me because, as I said, it felt like the best club in my hand. But you can also tell that it did feel good in my hand because I managed to produce the highest club speed of all the clubs I swung during this test with the Elyte. But the real surprise to me when it came to off the tee performance was the GT280. It really felt good, but it really lacks in terms of distance. It's lacking 5 yards behind the next club in terms of carry distance, and that can also be attributed to the lowest swing and ball speed of all the clubs in this test. After looking at performance of the tee, let's now see how our clubs perform off the deck. Right away, I think we can all agree that the distance range is much tighter for this department, but the 300 series shines here again. It turned the highest club speed into the highest ball speed, thus generating the longest total distance average from the clubs in our test. And it really benefited from a massive rollout as it got almost 40 yards of roll after making contact with the ground. As for the rest of the pack, the differences are minuscule, but I'll say that the Elyte did have higher spin rates, which probably explains why it had the shortest total distance average. With distance data now covered, it's time to take a look at something that you guys at home have been requesting, and we agree it's really important to include that in there. We're going to take a look at the dispersion zone of each one of our clubs. So right away, the 300 matches impressive distance performance with very accurate overall dispersion zones. I will say that it was definitely more accurate off the deck than it was off the tee. I felt like off the tee it can tend to be a little wild left and right, but overall, very decent when it came to off the deck performance. In terms of the copper, it had really a tendency to push the ball to the right when it came to off the deck, which is pretty typical. You'll tend to have more of a fade when you're hitting a driver off the deck, even mini driver. Off the tee, I'll say it was very consistent in terms of distance, and in terms of dispersion, it was really not too shabby either. Next up, we have the Elyte, which I really had high hopes for, and it really delivered when it came to off the deck performance, which I really didn't praise that much. I really praised its performance off the tee, but off the deck, it was one of the more accurate, at least of the first three that we've looked at so far. It was the most accurate. Some slight pulls and pushes here and there, but overall, very, very accurate, which I definitely appreciated and expected. But off the tee, the bomber that I felt like I had in my hand really turned some strikes into bad lemons, really. Off-center strikes would end up way shorter or being pulled out to the inside. So yeah, really disappointing for the Elyte when it came to off the tee performance. Incredibly, the GT280 even outclassed the Elyte when it came to off the deck performance. It was extremely tight in terms of dispersion zone. In terms of distance, it was also incredibly consistent. So really nothing bad to report in the case of the GT280 off the deck. And as I had mentioned earlier, the deep club face probably helped a lot with that. On the other hand, when it came to off the tee performance, it's an entirely different story. Bunch of pushes and pulls here and there, nothing really consistent when it came to distance. So really a bundle mess when it came to off the tee, but off the deck, it was so impressive that I think honestly it could make up, and you could simply swap out your 3-wood for the GT280 and not even bat an eye. Off the deck, the dispersion zone of the R7 quad was very respectable, nothing close to the GT280, but very nice nonetheless. A bit of issues when it comes to consistency in terms of distance, but in terms of being in a straight line, very, very appreciative of it. On the other hand, when it came to off the tee, here again, wild club. We have about 50 yards between the furthest strike to the right and the furthest strike to the left, which should tell you all you need to know about consistency for this club. Again, From the start, I've said it wasn't the club that felt great to me, so probably not the right shaft in there for me. But nevertheless, it needs to be said that it's not as consistent as some of the other ones that we tested today. So we're just about wrapped up with our test, but there are a few things that I do want to highlight before I let you go. Up first, I think there's no denying it. The 300 series was the best club of our test. As great as the GT280 and the Elyte may be, when it came to off the tee performance and off the deck performance, the average, the 300, was way better. Second, we often come to the conclusion that older clubs can match the performance of brand new models, and I think that we have the proof here today with the 300 series. Yes, it's not a 20-year-old model against a brand new one, but it's still 5 years older, and it's still outclassed the performance of some of the models that were released just this year. Last but not least, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point this out, but what feels right to you might not always be the right club for you. I know it sounds crazy to say because most of the time you're trying to only get fit into something that feels right for you, but from the results from our tests, I felt like the GT280 and the Elyte were the better clubs for me. But in terms of performance and dispersion zone, it was obvious that the 300 series was the better club overall for me. And with that being said, we've reached the end of our experiment today. I just want to take a moment to thank you guys for making it all the way to the end of this video. As always, if you have any ideas for us, make sure to drop them down in the comment section. And if you've enjoyed today's content, make sure to leave a like on this video. And why don't you go ahead and subscribe to Golf Avenue's channel while you're at it. We're always looking to put out more comparison tests like this one and helpful tips for golfers at home, just like you. And as always, for Golf Avenue, I've been Lou. Until next time, see ya.